This conference will now be recorded.
Pawan? Hello,
Sir.
Pawan?
Sir.
Am I audible to you now?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Today we will be discussing about the tumors of the esophagus and tumors of the stomach. The tumors of the esophagus are benign, only the benign tumor is the benign tumor is leiomyoma. This is this tumor is usually asymptomatic and sometimes it may cause bleeding and dysphagia. If there is any chance of dysphagia or bleeding, the usual treatment of this benign tumors is excision. And next coming to the esophageal carcinoma of esophagus, there are two types of carcinoma that are mostly present. One is a squamous type of carcinoma, and other one is adenocarcinoma. And squamous type of carcinoma, as you all know, that it is present at any part of the esophagus. Whereas adenocarcinoma, typically, it presents in the lower one third of the esophagus because of there is a gastric regurgitation of gastric juices, so leading to desquamation and squamous metaplasia occurs, epithelial metaplasia occurs, leading to the development of adenocarcinoma. And the incidence is usually increasing. So the incidence the incidence of adenocarcinoma is usually increasing because probable of hypertension of gastroesophageal reflux disease and Barrett's esophagus. And the overall 5-year survival of patients presenting with esophageal cancer is only 13%. But when the cancer is detected at an early stage, the survival chances are usually survival chance will be good. And what will be the clinical features? The patients usually complain of dysphagia, initially to the solid foods. Later, when the path is very much narrowed, they even complain the dysphagia even to the liquid. So the type of dysphagia in case of esophageal diseases is progressive and is painless dysphagia. And when there is a presentation is acute, they present with obstruction of the footballers within the esophagus. So when this is the acute stages, there will be dysphagia and all those things. Then it is and that in the later stages, due to there will be weight loss and cachexia will be present. When and also the features of chest pain and hoarseness will also be present in the late stages. And when you find the history of chest pain and hoarseness following this dysphagia, it suggests that there is mediastinal invasion. Why hoarseness occurs in these cases? Why hoarseness occurs in
infiltration into the recurrent laryngeal nerve.
Recurrent laryngeal nerve. Will tracheal compression cause hoarseness?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So it may be infiltration into recurrent laryngeal nerve, as you said, or large tumors compressing. Where is trachea? Where is the trachea situated? Anatomically, trachea is usually the esophagus lies in the C-shaped rings of the trachea. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, behind the trachea is the esophagus. So in esophageal tumors, it may compress over the trachea also to produce a hoarseness. So sometimes there will be fistula between the esophagus and the trachea or bronchial tree. How do you suspect that there is a fistula formation between the esophagus and the trachea or any bronchial tree? Soon, if there is a patient's complaint that there is episodes of coughing soon after the taking foods, one episode is okay. If there is a recurrent every time when the patient takes foods, there will be the coughing episodes will be there, and the presence of pneumonia and pleural effusion. It usually suggests there is fistula between the esophagus and the trachea. And on physical examination, you may not find any abnormality in these patients, but in some, when they present in the late stages, they will be present. They will present with the cachexia and cervical lymphadenopathy. You can see the palpable lymph nodes and any other evidence of metastatic spread. That is, esophageal malignancies can spread to the liver, to the lymph nodes, cervical lymph nodes, and other areas. Okay, 1 second. Next, coming to physical findings is usually coming to the investigations. What are the investigations? That is, upper GI endoscopy is the investigation of choice, and upper GI endoscopy that is associated with biopsy of the upper GI endoscope, and GI upper endoscopic guided biopsy is the investigation of choice in patients with esophageal carcinoma. Sometimes the barium swallow can also be useful, but this barium swallow cannot differentiate the there is a defect in the path of the bowel. So it can't drawback with barium swallow is it can't differentiate between benign and malignant lesions. First thing. Second thing is the biopsy cannot be taken by barium swallow. And further, for staging of these tumors, the staging of this tumor and the staging of the disease, PET-CT is usually required. This PET-CT is helpful for defining the metastatic spread and stage of the disease. And patients, when they to know the depth of the penetration of the tumor into the esophageal wall and to detect the regional lymph node involvement, then an endoscopic ultrasound, that is EUS, is usually required. So what is the treatment? Treatment usually depends on the stage of the disease, location of the disease, and the stage and the location. If the location is accessible and it is early without any distant metastasis, without any metastasis, then you can access the tumor. And if the size of the tumor is very large, that is large tumors which are not accessible, in these tumors, usually a trial of radiotherapy is given. This radiotherapy causes shrinkage of the tumor, and followed by radiotherapy, you will do excision of the tumor. And if the stage is of grade 4, that is there is distant metastasis, in these patients with distant metastasis, only chemotherapy is usual. If the tumor responds to chemotherapy, then chemotherapy is sufficient. And if the tumor does not give any good results with chemotherapy, it may combine with radiotherapy also. So the patient will be subjected to chemoradiotherapy. And in the 5-year survival is around 10% with patients of 3 tumors of size 3 and N1 means that is nodal metastasis present. So this is about the tumors of the esophagus. So coming to the tumors of the stomach or that is gastric carcinoma. These gastric carcinomas are the fourth leading causes of cancer death in worldwide. So it is most common in China, Japan, Korea, and Eastern Europe, and some parts of the South America. It is more common in men. That is 50% of the incidence is more in men when compared to women. And this incidence usually raises when age is more than 50 years. And when as that of esophageal malignancies, when the cancer is detected early, the prognosis overall prognosis will be good. But most of the patients of gastric carcinoma, they manifest lately, and there will be the 30 more less than 30% surviving after 5 years. So the prognosis is poor. So what is the pathophysiology of this? So for pathophysiology, the Helicobacter pylori is the key pathogenic, and it in 60 to 70% of cases, H. pylori infestation causes this gastric carcinoma. So what does this H. pylori do? This H. pylori, when in case of normal epithelium, gastric epithelium, when there is H. pylori infection, it causes loss of gastric secretion, that is echlorohydria. It causes echlorohydria. So when there is a chronic atrophic gastritis, so atrophic gastritis will be there chronically. It leads to echlorohydria. So this when there is a this echlorohydria is decreased HCl in the decreased HCl in the stomach. So when there is a decreased HCl, so there is the protective barrier in the stomach is gone. So it leads to bacterial colonization in the stomach, and in addition, the dietary nitrates forms nitrosamines. So these nitrosamines forms added will these nitrosamines will cause interstitial metaplasia, which leads to dysplasia and leading to malignancy. So the vital role is H. pylori that forms a major role in the formation of formation of gastric carcinoma. And other factors are diets that are rich in salt, that is preserved pickles, smoked or pickled foods, and consumption of nitrates may increase the risk of cancer. And the diet that lack vitamin A and vitamin C and fruits and vegetables causes the increased risk of malignancies. So the other risk factors, what are the other risk factors of gastric carcinoma include? These are smoking, alcohol, dietary associated like alcohol, salted foods, and smoked pickles, and all those things, and autoimmune gastritis that is seen in case of pernicious anemia, adenomatous gastric polyps, and previous history of partial gastrectomy, Meniere's disease, and hereditary diffuse gastric cancer families, that is HDC1 mutations, familial adenomatous polyposis. So these are the conditions which increase the risk of gastric cancer, and mostly all the tumors of gastric cancer are adenocarcinomas, and they arise from the mucus secreting cells in the base of gastric crypts. They may be either intestinal or diffuse. What do you meant by the terms intestinal or diffuse? What is intestinal?
Patchy.
What intestinal means? Usually the word intestinal means it develops from the epithelium in eclorocytal stage. That is not a when there is metaplasia, the cancers develop from that is called intestinal. When the cancers develop from an intact membrane, then it is called as diffuse. So in most of the developing countries, 50% of the tumors develop from the antrum of the stomach, whereas 20 to 30% develop from the gastric body, or often from the greater cavity of the stomach, and 20% from the cardia of the stomach. So usually in early stages, the cancer is usually asymptomatic, and these early gastric cancers are usually diagnosed accidentally by upper GI endoscopy, that is done for dyspepsia. So advanced cancers, they have they complain of weight loss, dyspepsia, and ulcer-like pain, whereas anorexia, nausea usually occur, while their early satiety, hematomatosis, melena, and dyspepsia are less common. And sometimes there is dysphagia in case of tumors that obstruct the gastric cardia. So when these tumors obstruct the gastroesophageal junction, that causes dysphagia. So there will be anemia is seen, in which there will be occult bleeding is also common. So sometimes the examination doesn't reveal any abnormality, but there will be signs of weight loss, anemia, and a palpable epigastric mass in advanced cases. These findings are sometimes infrequent. So if there is a metastasis to the liver, you will see jaundice, and there will be ascites. So these the presence of jaundice and ascites, this signifies the metastatic spread. So metastasis arise most commonly in the liver, lungs, peritoneum, and bone marrow. So what is the investigation of choice? Coming to the investigation, upper GI endoscopy is the investigation of choice for diagnosing the gastric carcinomas. And in in the picture A, you can see the two arrows that is pointing towards the mass. That is this structure here. Here is the gastric carcinoma. So, and the below picture is after the excision of the gastric carcinoma. So there is a defect. You can see. Said here you have excised the tumor. So next, barium meal is also done to see whether any irregular fillings are present. And as in case of esophageal malignancy, PET CT is used to do for diagnosing the for staging the distant metastasis and staging of the disease. And laparoscopy with peritoneal washings. This is usually done to know whether there is peritoneal spread or not. So what is the treatment? So usually in early tumors, resection is the treatment of choice. In resection there is we will do gastrectomy with lymph node excision. When there is a proximal tumors, that is proximal tumors is tumors in the gastroesophageal junction. In these patients, gastroesophageal junction tumors, in these patients you will do distal esophagectomy. And recent studies show that perioperative chemotherapy with ebirusin, cisplatin, and fluorouracil improves the survival rates. So then coming to in case of advanced treatment, in advanced gastric of with the tumor or of and the patient condition is not supportive, in these patients you will give palliative treatment. Palliative treatment is 5-fluorouracil and cisplatin and other platinum and taxane based resins. And usually the trastuzumab is a biological agent that may benefit the patient in patients where there is HER2 mutations. So next, coming to the gastric lymphoma, it is a rare tumor of the stomach, and there is chances of the incidence of gastric lymphoma is only 5%. It is seen in the 5% of the general population, and this is also this lymphoma is also causes the complaints like dyspepsia, early satiety, and all those things. And usual treatment is excision, and sometimes these lymphomas usually these are most chemosensitive, and these are when subjected to chemotherapy, they show good results. Next, coming to gystomas. Gystomas are the tumors that arise from the gastrin secreting cells of the stomach. So when these tumors increase, these tumors, when you are subjected to examination, you can see mass that is felt within the abdomen, in the below the left hypochondrium. These also, the incidence of these gystomas is also very less, and these for gystomas you need to do excision. Prior to excision, if the size is very large, you have to do radiotherapy followed by excision and subjected to chemotherapy if required. So this is about today's class. So in the next class, we will be discussing about the tumors of the liver. Okay. So we will be closing the session now. Any doubts?
No, sir.
No doubts.
No, sir.
Okay. So okay, if there are no doubts, even we'll close the session now.